Hello, a warm welcome to our humanitarian talk on partnerships and resources, a conversation on roles and alternative funding models for localization. It's a pleasure to welcome you here. It's a long day with more than 25 humanitarian talks, and we are very happy that you're interested in our issue. And I am Bodo von Borries from the VENRO, the German NGO platform on development humanitarian assistance. And the issue today has been an ongoing issue during the Humanitarian Forum. So we are building on the discussions yesterday of the panel boostering on localization and various humanitarian talks today and yesterday. So it's a pleasure to welcome my panelists, which I will present in a while. We will have a very strong focus in the discussion coming from the local models, existing models of partnership and funding, and then coming to the barriers and maybe bottlenecks to overcome. It's a very common agreement among the discussions in these days that the progress on localization hasn't been really been enough in the last years since the World Humanitarian Summit and the Grand Bargain 1.0. So there are two priority areas on the Grand Bargain 2.0, and one of them is localization, and we are also looking for a new political momentum, which is to promote really progress in changing structures and sharing power. So yesterday, Mr. Köhler for DG ECHO explained some of these bottlenecks and barriers. And he also said there's a lot to do for ECHO. So he launched and announced a consultation process on the localization guidance to be started from now on. And maybe this talk can also already be one of the input in this consultation. So the German government has, together with NGOs and our platform, already 4 years ago, discussed and launched a guideline on localization. So many of the commitments are there still to be implemented. And it's just one example for many other donors we see around Europe or around the world. And it's also a question for the international acting NGOs to change roles, open up for partnerships. So a lot of initiatives and trainings are going on this. So today's talk, it will be hopefully really a talk and a conversation between us, hopefully with short statements, with active participation from you. This talk will take, as I said, the perspective coming from local actors and then pass on the role of international NGOs and finally the role from ECHO as a donor. So first, I would like to introduce to you Keumala Devi as director of an Indonesian NGO. It's called PKPA. And Keumala, you are a member of the program together, and you will shortly explain what is your role in the project. And the question to you would be, what are your expectations towards a partnership with northern-based NGOs? What kind of external resources are needed to respond more effectively to communities' needs? And warm welcome to you, Keumala from Indonesia, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bodo, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, I hope everyone can see me because I cannot see myself in the screen. Yeah, So about your questions about my expectation towards partnership with Melbourne-based NGO. Before I get to my expectation will come from several findings that we have in the Together program that you mentioned. My organization already become a member of this. These partnership networks consist of 44 organizations, and the 40 of them actually are local organization, meaning the 90% membership of this network actually are local actors. That's the first. And then each member of Together have different focus on issue, child protection, like my organization, community development, women empowerment, and so on. The participatory planning process through organizational capacity assessment also become important aspect in this program, because that become the a milestone of us to design the need to capacity strengthening in each organization and countries. And also the establishment of what we call Humanitarian Operation and Innovation Facility, or we call it HOIFA Fund. It is a flexible fund that can be used for two purposes. One is to do the emergency response, and the other one is to set out and try out innovative solution for better humanitarian action. We already tried this in Indonesia for quick response for Semeru mountain eruption, and the other one to establish a woman-friendly and transitional shelter in Bangladesh that will provide space and facilities for women, such as lactation spot and sanitation in emergency situation. So based on these points that we find and we learn together in the Together program, the expectation, I would say that the partnership between South and North NGO must go beyond partnership like grantor and grantees. There must be exchange learning from both sides. Horizontal partnership, I would say, where power is equally shared, learning and exchange method must be a mutual process. For example, the method of participatory rural appraisal that we already aware now, we're familiar with that now, has designed and implemented in the scheme of this partnership, this kind of partnership. But then it has become a common approach worldwide, meaning the process to get solution in handling crisis situation is only possible based on horizontal partnership. That's all for me now. And one more about your question about external resources. Beside the need of flexible funding, multi-year agreement that enable local partners to improve the institutional capacity, risk and capacity sharing, I would say resource need not only but funding, but also space from donors, such as increase the local and national actors' presence in the event of humanitarian, where localization become the topics. And this can and should be endorsed as well as donor bodies, meaning more space for local actors to share the challenges like we're doing now. Ensure that every coordination meeting, there will be representative from local, national, regional, and global. What for? To trigger the sustainable strategies and changes. Another resource that maybe we can see is the knowledge that can be useful to increase the effectiveness of humanitarian response, such as support to speed up the digitalizations in humanitarian action, not only in particular emergency project, but as capacity strengthening process that institutionalized in local partners. I think that's all, and we can discuss it more after. Back to you, Bodo.
Yeah, thank you. Mala, maybe can put one further question to, do you feel already after almost 2 years of this program that the partnership has changed already from your view? And
Yeah, one.
yes.
Yeah. The scheme of the environment of the partnership really different with the other partnership that we have before, because the main decision making process is actually rely on the local partners. Gradually, starting from country until the global level, we have the committee that consisting of the representative of local partners and the intermediary NGOs. And this process really discuss about truly the process of making decisions. So everybody can say their voice, can have say yes or no, or I have doubt about this. So I think this is quite give game changing into making space for local actors to say the words from their perspective, without thinking about, oh, maybe they will see me as someone who reluctant or so on. So I think it is a very game changing in this Together program, and also series of capacity strengthening that we already have 1 year and a half, that also help us to improve our organizational capacity. Yeah.
Thank you, Mala. And I think it's important to remember that this project is part of an externally funded from the German Foreign
Yeah.
Ministry, and the emergency funds are, as you said, are decided upon from a local committee, but together still in a partnership. So it's nice to turn now to Maren Ralph, which I welcome here as program coordinator of the Together project from the German NGO Welthungerhilfe. Maren, you have been drawing up this concept and now are coordinator. And from your perspective of 1.5 years of experience, maybe the question, what has this program already had some impact on the mindsets inside the 4 organizations who are international organizations who are leading this program from Germany? And do you see any new role already for Northern NGO in this program?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bodo. Yeah, indeed. Surely, to really achieve change of mindsets and a role, and even more so when it comes to behavioral change, that is a lengthy process. And we have a 4-year program, as you mentioned. It's already 2 years in, and we had long processes for setting it up, and really took the time, and we're also given the space and opportunity to take the time to set it up properly, so that we have governance structures which really also allow local actors in the program. And as Mala was already mentioning, we have 44 organizations in the program, 40 from local and national organizations in 8 countries around the world, 4 international ones from Germany. And I think what we are trying to do to really achieve this change of mindsets, I think it requires a lot of practice. We do need to test it and really experience it to actually change individually and as an institution and organization. And so what we've built into the project is a governance structure, and Mala was also mentioning it already, which consists of country steering committees at the country levels in the 8 countries. And then we have on the global level, when all 9 countries come together, we have a program advisory committee. And in the country steering committees, they are only represented, we have representatives of the 5 local or national organizations that participate in the country. The international organization that supports at country level is not part of the steering committee, which takes the decisions and makes strategic decisions and has the role of leadership and the responsibility to monitor progress also, and flag the need for modifications of the program, for instance. And at the global level, the program advisory committee, which consists again of 1 representative of one of the organizations per country, the local ones, and 1 representative of the international organizations, also does that for the global level. So I think automatically, because of this built-in governance structure, which was of course also suggested by the internationals as well, we need to change our mindset, our behavior, and the way we work together. And that automatically puts the international organizations into a supporting and facilitating role, like mine in this case as the coordinator for this. I am an employee of an international organization represented in the Together program, but the role is a facilitating role, and the role is a supporting role, and it's really the local actors that decide what are the priorities and what are the priority actions that they want to implement within the Together project. And that also is really possible because the donor, in this case, and you've mentioned it, the German Foreign Office, allows us this flexibility. The flexibility for the local actors in the program to take these decisions and to suggest modifications according to their identified priorities at country level. And that is different for all the countries when it comes to the capacity strengthening and sharing component. And we try to emphasize that it's really about strengthening what potential gaps the organizations themselves have identified, but also really sharing the expertise that is already there and acknowledging the expertise. And I think that's a process. And we've also seen that within the designing of the program, that this needs to be taken into consideration, that it's not just about strengthening a lack or a deficit and filling a gap, but it's really about sharing and also acknowledging the expertise. And that sometimes is also a challenge to really see what are our own expertise, and also for the local partners to really consider that. What are the expertises that are there, and to make them available to the other partners. And this is why we also try to network a lot and create these spaces for communication and discussion at global level, but as well as on country level, so that everybody can actually exchange and has the space to discuss on a horizontal level, as Marla was also saying, so horizontal partnerships. I'd stop here, and I guess we will have some more questions.
Thank you, Maren. Maybe very shortly, another question towards, is this new program approach, is it really a strange animal inside Welthungerhilfe, or are you feeling your colleagues are really asking for your experience, and the management really wants to see it as a model?
No, I would definitely say that it's very supported within the organization. It's not institutionalized. Yes, we are piloting something here, which is a huge multi-country, multi-stakeholder program. And while there are similar programs, of course, where local actors and national partners are involved, and also really advocate for their needs and priorities, I would still say that Together is a bit of a pilot and a new thing to try, but very much supported, and there's quite a lot of interest also within the organization to see how we can use the learnings from Together and to hear what the local partners in Together say, to use that for the future designing and programming together with local actors from the start.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to turn to the second model of partnership and funding. And I want to present to you Darara Gonche from Marsabit, northern Kenya. Welcome, Darare, to our panel. And Darare is director of a local NGO, and she is implementing an approach called Survivor Community-Led Response, SCLR, which is focusing a lot on the self-help groups and very basic community response, and trying to organize and do some learning and looking for external funding. So we want to ask you, Darare, what are the lessons learned you had so far concerning the partnerships connecting to external donors from this very local based community processes, and what are your expectations towards funding from the donors and from the intermediaries or the international NGOs?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Darare Gonche, and I'm director for an organization called Indigenous Resource Management Organization based in northern Kenya, Marsabit County. As you have been told, as an organization, we have been practicing and using an emerging approach called SCLR. For us, we call it Supporting Community-Led Response, which means that we are supposed to support communities affected by crisis in form of flooding, in form of drought, in form of, any kind of crisis, so that they may take lead and manage their own responses in a way that improves their immediate well-being and also strengthen their longer-term resilience that accelerate transformational change. In this relation, because we have been piloting this project for close to now 3 years, and with the outcome of what has been assessed, it has proved that the approach is working quite well, and communities themselves would wish to continue, working towards direction, where they are given the opportunities to lead their own intervention. And as such, we have adopted this approach, and we are in touch with so many international donors whom we have proposed to them that we need to go this direction, and they have been quite flexible. Because if it is during the time of crisis like drought, we don't need to follow the a kind of, a planned ways of doing things, like we need to place quotation. Let's say we want to buy a plastic tank, or we want to purchase food for the community members. Instead, we adopted a strategy where we have an organized group who have organized themselves. They have written proposal based on what we have, an advert which we have placed in the community members, so that they address the immediate needs of community members, which we feel most of them, they have come out very clearly, and they have presented to us a very good proposals to attend to the wider communities. So grant is given to the groups. We call it group cash grant, where they implement project not of their own, but project that targets the wider communities. And it's like the community groups are linked between the local organization like ours, IREMO, and the local communities. And they have liked it, and it is really working quite good. This approach works across during the time of emergency, the time of recovery, and even development. It is quite flexible, because it is people-led, about dignity, and about transformational change, the way we do things. In this relation, we have seen many international organizations, those whom we have been working with, like Diakone, who has their head office in Kenya, Nairobi. They have been very supportive. We have seen Asali Humanitarian Network, which IREMO is a member, an organization of, local organization of 30 members. They have come together so that they become their own voices. Through this, and through the Oxfam, which has been supported so much by Oxfam, we are heading somewhere, because change has to come. And if we have to do things differently, then we must, put communities at the center of everything. But the local organization and the international organization must accept this approach for it to continue. Then there is also flexible funding from international organization, that sometimes, okay, we have got so many young organizations which are coming up, and they have good ideas. Sometimes maybe their capacity is quite low. So we also have flexible funding from international organization to make, this organization to grow, because they are rightly in touch with the grassroots. I think based on this, I feel whatever questions you have asked, I have answered you. But if there are any things that we need to add, of course, the discussion is ongoing, and I will make more contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dara. So it's really a complex network you are having as a local NGO with the community-based groups, and then maybe a national Caritas, and maybe international one. And maybe we are talking about sustainability, maybe public funds, even a donor. So that's really a very complex partnership. And maybe you can say, you had any problems of mistrust between the partners, and after 3 years, how did you overcome it?
It is true. Sometimes, the international organization feels that the local organization may not have the capacity. But when we talk of capacity, how do we talk of capacity when you have someone who is, rightly at the center of where there are crises? It is better to build the capacity of the organization, so that if the international organization are there or not, we have local organizations who are there to stay. And even without kind of funding, sometimes they are there to give help and support to community members. So there is the issue of capacity, lack of accountability, there are so many things, that they mention, which we feel that all this can be overcome by building the capacity of local actors. If you do this, then we are super to go.
Thank you, Darare. And I understood that the flexibility of funds can also refer to capacity strengthening activities.
Yes.
And the decision about the content also could be to strengthen the capacities of the initiatives at local level. Okay, I see you nodding. Thank you. So we turn to our fourth and panelist, Brigitte Mukengeshavi from DG ECHO. Welcome, Brigitte. We met yesterday in Brussels, but now we see online, and Brigitte is policy officer at one of the international policy units of DG ECHO and part of an informal localization team inside ECHO. So yeah, okay. So welcome, and I would like to ask you. So ECHO as a donor and bound to a lot of legal and to a lot of regulations, a lot of expectations and control. And so what do are your expectations for these kind of new partnerships you have heard here? And maybe you've seen at other sites piloting, even at ECHO. So what would be your expectation for the role of maybe the intermediary international NGOs and for the local actors? And do you have any good practices maybe already inside ECHO? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bodo. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brigitte Mukengeshavi. I'm one of the focal points for localization in DG ECHO. The team is not informal, it is a formal team. It's just that we, since DG ECHO, the Commission adopted the communication on humanitarian aid last week, we are working on this guidance, and it is a sort of shared responsibility between my unit and another unit, but we really kind of heavily all involved in this process. So just to clarify that, in terms of expectations on partnerships, this communication that was adopted last year has made localization one of DG ECHO priorities. And one of the key steps to achieve the ambitions in the communication is, at least in this area, is to develop a guidance, particularly on how to achieve equal partnerships between international organizations and local responders. Why is that important? As you mentioned it, Bodo, the EU humanitarian regulation foresees direct funding only to UN agencies, international organizations, and international INGOs. For the time being, we're working with about 156 partners, and these organizations have gone through a very stringent and independent ex-ante assessment just to demonstrate that they are able to they have the financial, the back offices and the humanitarian capacities to manage EU funding in a sound way and uphold the humanitarian principles in their operations, and also to operate in multiple crisis setting, because DG ECHO is a global player. So these legal and operational constraints mean that DG ECHO can only do localization through one intermediary, which can be either a funding instrument like a country-based pool fund or localized financing mechanism, or through its partners. So this means that partnerships are going to be very important entry points to doing localization. We were not going to focus only on partnerships. Of course, there are other commitments that are sub-commitments that are linked to the localization agenda. We have capacity strengthening or enhancing. I don't want to talk about capacity strengthening because this is not always well perceived, but that's an important element that we have to take into account. It's also part of the Grand Bargain commitment still. So there will also be an emphasis on that element, on enhancing the participation and role of local actors in coordination mechanisms, and we'll look at funding models, we'll look at how we can support women-led organizations and marginalized group. The thing here is that we are now all aware that localization will really not happen if funding and implementation modalities are still embedded in these power imbalances that we're talking about in the Grand Bargain and different other setting, and these mechanisms and procedures that are sort of disempowering for local organizations. So our really kind of expectation is, or ambition is, to really foster equal partnerships. The question now is, how do we do it within this system that we have now, and the partners that we have? Is there any willingness? We hear a lot about a change of mindset. Is everyone at that place, or where they're ready to change and to begin to develop these equal partnerships? And what kind of framework do we need, and how do we as ECHO connect that to our operations and legal requirements that are not going to change anytime soon? So so these are the kind of reflections that we're having. We also looking at how we could use these partnerships, not just to create a level playing field for local organizations, but really how do we use them to make them more transformative for local ecosystems, really looking at the landscape, the local systems. How do we empower, how do we reinforce the systems that exist, the capacity, the knowledge that is already there, to begin to promote local leadership, local agency, and to move towards more, self-reliance, and make this slogan as local as possible and as international as necessary a reality in our system, the system we're operating. So these are the things that we're thinking about, and as Michael said yesterday, the panel, the high-level panel yesterday, was a sort of the beginning of a consultative process that we're going to launch, where we will invite our partners also to input into that. And this discussion is also, like you said, part of that process. And we see this as something, an inclusive process where local actors will also have something to say to influence the guidance that we're going to develop, that is going to guide and inform our future localization investment or localization programming. In terms of good practices, yes, we have developed good practices in the sense that because we had a commitment, a political commitment that we needed to honor, but at the same time we were restricted a little bit by our legal instruments. We kind of in the beginning we decided to support the global process and to help the work stream and come up with some initiatives that were going to kind of push the agenda at the global level. And that gave us time to look more internally at what we could do, what kind of new ways of working we could come up with, or tools to begin to do to support more this agenda. So we in this process we supported or invested in a country-based pool fund in South Sudan and Ukraine, and we just finalized our lessons a couple of months ago on this experience, and it's really kind of established that these funding tools are really kind of enabling for localization. So now we're thinking about how to take this to another level. We have also tested different models, consortium-based agreements, where we would bring a partner, one of our partners, together with local organizations, our network of local organizations, and they would work together. And then this has had many benefits in the sense of, channeling more funding, cascading, aspect of flexibilities, of, longer term vision, particularly for capacity strengthening, releasing funding fast. So we have the programmatic partnerships, which are new generations, if I may, of programs that we're piloting with a number of partners. And these are, they cover, kind of spread over 3 years, and some of them, or many of them, are looking at many aspects of the Grand Bargain. There are 2 that are really kind of focusing on localization, perhaps not covering all aspects, but really kind of covering many aspects of localization. And there we're seeing also how the feedback we're getting from partners is really kind of positive in terms of, channeling funding, this flexibility, long-term and engagement with local actors, making them a little bit more visible in terms of engagement with DG ECHO, etc. And then we have we had a very interesting flagship in Lift, called Lift in Turkey, which is very similar. I would not go into details, but it's very similar to the program that Maren and Maren was talking about earlier, in terms of structure, in terms of it also has an embedded pool fund mechanism with 2 windows, looking at different type of actors. It covers, it supported CBOs, small NGOs, medium NGO, local NGOs, to bigger NGOs with different sort of ceiling in terms of budget. Very, very, very interesting. I can share more information on that. But these are the kind of things that we have done.
If I may interrupt you, thank you. We want to really get more into details together with maybe some questions from the audience.
Yes, sure.
As I understood, sorry to resume a little bit. You are already in this pilots, and you're opening up space in the existing legal framework, and asking for more practice and to open up maybe also on the accountability question on the decision structures, and I think it would be good to know maybe in the last round what are next steps to go forward in the existing framework, and hopefully in the consultation there will be a strong participation from local actors, and maybe some spaces or some procedure to do this. Yesterday there was even a suggestion of a consultative body maybe of local actors. Thank you, Brigitte. I would like to call now, but you will have chance to react, but call now for our audience. As you know from other talks probably already, there is the possibility to go to Slido and have comments. And the banner is showing the next, the link for the external visitors. And please enter the hashtag which you can see, and then put your comment, and we will try to put it into the discussion still. So I already had two comments, and I want to take up one which is referred to overhead transfer to local organizations. And of course, that's at the nucleus of power sharing is the overheads and the institutional running costs. So ECHO is giving over cost maybe to an international NGO, and the international NGO should share an important part or whatever is relevant, or maybe everything. So that's an open discussion. And to the local actor. And the question was if ECHO has a specific role on that, Brigitte, and how can we ensure maybe that this is really a fair sharing of overheads? This question could be either to Keumala or Darare and Maren. Brigitte, maybe you can react very briefly.
All right. If we have a rule on overheads, we don't, not as yet, but this is part of the I think that there's some background noise. Can you hear me? Yeah. This is part of this is part of the things that you will see in when we start this consultation, because we consider that it is necessary as part of supporting local actors in terms of institutional capacity. It is also, it has a role in terms of helping them build the mechanisms and structures and frameworks in terms of, enhancing their accountability, risk management, and all this. This is on the table. It's part of the things that we are considering. So you will have the opportunity to input on that. Some of our partners, we are already discussing this also with partners. Some of our partners, including UN agencies, have already integrated this element in their partnerships. I know that, I will not mention any name, but some of them they're not giving as much as they're giving to international organizations. But I guess that this is a sort of incremental approach that they have. But these are things that we are asking our partners to consider, and we will be discussing with also our partners. For now, we don't have, our localization approach is not really kind of finalized. So it would be dishonest to say that we have a rule. But we think that we will have something about it for sure. Over.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I know it's a very touchy issue, and we don't want to enter into the details of what is fair, but I think it's the heart of power. So I would some reaction. Maybe I'm looking to my the other panelists who would like to react on this issue.
I would like to, if I may, Bodo. I think the question also refers to whether it isn't the responsibility of the leading organizations to ensure that overheads are shared. And we know in the case of ECHO, these leading organizations would usually be some international organization based with a base in Europe. So this is always the discussion about power imbalances. We will not overcome this issue unless it's also the responsibility of the leading, let's say, international organization or intermediary to create a partnership of trust where all the other partners feel comfortable enough to raise this issue and say, well, this is how we should share the overheads. And that is one thing. So create a partnership where everyone feels comfortable to raise the issue and negotiate it and discuss what is appropriate when it comes to overhead transfer or sharing, but also to create standards for this and institutionalize the share or transfer of overheads to local actors. And I think this is something where we also, 4 organizations, the 4 German international organizations, and together discussed quite a bit, and we realized that none of us really have a finalized standard which is institutionalized, and it is something we want to really look into. But yes, and together we do share with the local actors, but again, it needs to be standardized and institutionalized. And still, there needs to be room for negotiation for the local actors.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see nodding. Teomala, you want to add on this, or?
Yeah, maybe Maren already explained, and maybe from perspective of local actors, it is a space that I mentioned before. Not only a space to be present in such a discussion, but also space and trust by giving us more portion of this, and then meaning you give us a lot of trust, more trust. I mean, so it is for the organization. It's also allow us to then design the capacity strengthening that we need, and also the learning process that we can do to improve our organization. So for us, it's more than the percentage of fund. It is the formulation of trust and the horizontal partnership that I mentioned before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Darare, you have anything
Yes.
to add on this? Yeah, please.
I think much has been said by my other fellow speakers, but just to mention that when we talk of overhead, this means a lot, and many times when budgeting is done or when funding is being received, it's not easy, for other partners or the partners to share what has been received, because they are not ready to sit around, with the local actors to make sure that the overhead is being shared in openness and transparency manner. So it is always good to have a discussion so that a lot of money should not remain at higher level, and what comes down is just too peanut for the local organization even to run their own administrative cost. Thank you.
Yeah. So you need the trust and you need the framework to discuss it openly. But it may be in some relations it may be still difficult to discuss, and in others maybe there is already this good long relationship to do so, and hopefully in transparency, and maybe you don't need a standard, or maybe you need some more some general guideline. That's still an open discussion. I think we have to follow. I want to take up maybe one or two more comments from the Slido chat. Thank you, and maybe there's maybe just one going more onto the relation of bigger and smaller NGOs. Maybe that's the question of do you need a minimum overall size for a donor like ECHO to be a model like this? Or is it also possible for smaller funding? And what is about this administrative capacity, which is often a problem? Maybe that's going to Brigitte for a short reflection.
Can you come up? I'm not sure I got the question because you were breaking. So what is the question exactly? Are we ready to work with small organizations? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're talking about funding models. So I understand the question also for a consortium or fund models like we heard now, and maybe not led by bigger organizations, not led, formed by a consortium of smaller ones. And what is your general thinking about?
I mean,
how many of these models can you administer? And
No,
so,
that's the whole issue. What we've been saying is that it is difficult for us to deal with a multitude of small organizations. Plus, we have these requirements that would disqualify them in any way. I mean, the stringent exam assessment that I was referring to the beginning, that big organizations have to go through because they have to comply with certain standard, and they have to be based in the EU, etc., etc. So we are not going to be able to partner directly with big, small, medium local organizations. It will have to be done through one of our partners or through some funding mechanism like country-based pool funds, etc. So in the model that I was explaining, this is where the LIFT project is a sort of kind of a blueprint for us. It's a project which brought together different organizations in terms of size, in terms of capacity, in terms of, and GIZ is was strong enough to kind of coordinate capacity activities to the funding, the whole things with perhaps with some other partners, but they were able to provide that sort of broad covering of beneficiary organizations in this program. So this is one of the models that we think that we have also programmatic partnerships that are also working with different types of organizations. We have one that is going to be implemented by IFRC that is going to target national societies, and there again, I guess that there are different sizes and types of organizations with different needs, etc. So it will have to be through a partner, a strong partner, or a consortium of international organization and local organizations, something like that. Over.
yes, okay, but okay, in this case, the GIZ is not a typical, maybe humanitarian partner, but
Development, but yeah. But
yeah,
then that brought also an element of nexus, because then we were able to work with BMZ to co-found it with BMZ. So another plus in this sort of format of projects.
yeah. So it's still some kind of a open question, also to this leading role and the legal framework we have so far. Maybe that's a long-term question we have to address at the political level.
Yes.
And yes, maybe I want to take up a last question. I think we are already getting more or less to the end of our talk, and Kiumala, no, sorry, Darare, sorry. There was a question on how to ensure gender equality in women's leadership in Mazabit in your approach. And then I would ask, but very short piece, Darare, and then I would ask for a final round of opinion for next steps. Okay, Darare. Maybe you can combine it with your suggestions for next steps to really make progress on partnership models.
Thank you. In relation to the gender equality and women's leadership, for this particular approach, it really looks upon, how to bring everyone on board. It's about inclusivity. Many times, if decisions are made, the decisions are made either by men or the gatekeepers. And we make sure that for this particular approach, our entry is that let's have an inclusive kind of structure where we have men, women, and traditional elders coming together to form what is called a community volunteers, so that if there is anything that needs to be done, they are always there. A woman is there, the man is there, and they can make an inclusive decision making. So that is our approach. And being a champion of gender equality. So we really focus on that, and even when we train, that is our focus, and that is the mandate and the guiding principles of ACLR. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have just 5 minutes left, so maybe you can have 1 or 2 sentences each. What would be your personal next step to make progress in equal partnerships and new funding models? Who wants to start? Maybe the other way around. We give the last word to our local partners. Maybe Brigitte, please.
Okay, thank you. I would say for us, the immediate next step is really this guidance that we're developing. So getting your input, really picking the brains of our international and local partners in this process would be really interesting. And one advice to Kamela, because she was talking about opening up the space for local actors to be part of conversations at many levels. I think this is something that DG ECO has been doing from the start, from the when we engaged in this process. I mean, it was thanks to DG ECO that local actors were able to access the work stream. When it started, there was no local actors, so we did that, and we will continue to push for that in coordination mechanisms, and also encourage dialogue at country level with our country offices, where if there is one in where you're operating, try to engage at that level, and we'll keep this open dialogue will be very, very important moving forward. Over.
Thank you, Brigitte. And Maren, what would be your personal favorite for the next steps?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, we do need to really consistently and consequently integrate sort of governance structures into our long-term strategic partnerships, as well as into any project that we are doing, which foster the local leadership, and that's of local actors as well as local communities. That has to be a standard in a way that local leadership is promoted and ensured. And then it would also, of course, be great to encourage more donors to really integrate flexible funding components like we have in the Together project, which allow to react particularly in humanitarian action, which quickly allow to react to onset disasters and to see what the priorities are of local actors and communities in a given crisis situation.
Thank you, Maren. And Keumana.
Yeah, thank you, Bodo. So I think from my side as part of local actors, how no matter how flexible the funding within the partnership, it will available during the partnership. So the next step will be how this partnership enable local actors to have business model, to have alternative funding model that enable us to sustain even after the partnership finish or over. So that will be the real question. If we enter or start the partnership, how this will bring us to sustainability, because every partnership have an end, and the flexible fund as well. So we need to discuss that more within this program and consortium, how this will lead to the sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Keumala. And Tarare, what would be your most important next steps?
Mine is how are we going to make sure that we remove unnecessary administrative barriers towards, funding mechanism for local leadership. And the second one is about longer term funding. Many times, the funding come in form of 1 year, 2 years. So how do we make sure that we have a longer term funding for the local organization to focus on quality processes of leading to strong organizational and also network. And the lastly, maybe to Bridget, is that you mentioned about the big organization and the small organization. In Kenya, we have a SAL humanitarian network where we have the big and small organization, and it has been further divided into women-led organization coming together, 10 of them. and men-led organizations. So we are trying to make sure that they are small, especially the women-led organizations are small and not visible. So this has made us, the women, to be seen and to be visible, because we are doing a lot of work back, in Kenya. So already something is going on, and it's good to focus on such a network. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I think it has been very rich in just 1 hour. A lot about common decision structures, really, about sharing overheads, about new funding models. Structures should be more streamlined more open up the existing legal framework, which is really limiting. And one way is to open up and to broaden, and the other way is really to think about new legal foundations, maybe a political issue. And we have a lot about sustainability and after ending of partnerships even. So and I think very interesting also the local networks, more than of smaller and bigger NGOs and women-led and more. And so a lot of ideas. Thank you, and hopefully it will lead to a very strong consultation process, Brigitte, for the guidance. Hopefully the many discussions ongoing, and hopefully ECHO is finding a good way to have a really meaningful consultation and in this new structures, and hopefully it helps to open up our shifting to shift our minds for more ideas and more local power. Thank you to all of you panelists. Thank you also for my colleagues in the background, Maya Grille and Julia Friedrich, who supported preparation and technical organization, and hope you have some more fruitful discussion and some more peaceful weeks to come. Goodbye, and see you again at the next humanitarian forum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.